Hello YouTube, welcome back to another video. Today, after I've given it some time for everything to calm down and see how everyone plays with their new teams, we're going to be talking about last Thursday's NBA trade deadline. Now we have a small sample size of what everyone has looked like with their new teams. So without further ado, let's get started. The first trade of the deadline day was a very minor one. It sent Daniel House from Philadelphia to Detroit, along with a second-round pick this year that is New York's, in exchange for a 2028 second-round pick that is top 55 protected. So it's almost guaranteed to not convey to Philadelphia that 2028 pick. So for this trade, Detroit just gets a guy. They just basically took on his salary to get a second-round pick this year. I don't remember if they released him or not. They might have. I think they did, maybe. But either way, even if they don't buy him out, he's not going to play hardly at all in Detroit. They don't need him at all. They already have a bunch of young guys after the trade deadline, like Fontecchio and all them. And then they basically just give up a 2028 second-round pick that's not going to Philadelphia. They keep that second-round pick, basically, unless they're really good, because if it's 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, then that's the only way that it goes to Philadelphia. If it's inside that top 55, then Detroit keeps it. That's what that protection means. So they get the second-round pick for nothing, basically, to take on a $4 million salary. For Philadelphia, this cleared up cap space for them to sign Kyle Lowry. Because of the new rules of the CBA, they were in the luxury tax or very close to it, so they wouldn't be able to sign a buyout player, which was Kyle Lowry. So if they didn't make this trade, they wouldn't be able to sign Lowry. Lowry is a Philadelphia guy, so it could make a big impact to their culture and everything. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. So that's basically what that trade did for Philadelphia. So for Philadelphia, I'm going to give this trade a C+, because they get Kyle Lowry. They got rid of a guy on their cap slot, but they had to give up the second-round pick. That's why it's lower. Then for Detroit, this is an A+. They get a second-round pick this year for nothing, basically. Next up, the Raptors traded Otto Porter Jr. and Kira Lewis Jr. and a first-round pick to the Utah Jazz in exchange for Kelly Olynyk and Ochai Agbaji. Basically, with this trade, what the Raptors were saying is they think that this is a weak draft class this year, which it is. So they were thinking that Ochai Agbaji right now is better than anyone that they could draft with this first-round pick that they traded away for this year. And I don't blame them. That's a good trade. That's a good gamble to make. Agbaji was an amazing player in college, and he still has shown a lot of promise for the future. The only reason that Utah traded him away is because he was eating away at their guard minutes for guys like Talen Horton-Tucker and Keontae George and Bryce Sensabaugh. All of them were losing minutes because Agbaji was there. So they basically trade away Agbaji for that first-round pick. Not only that, though, they get a good veteran locker room leader like Otto Porter, who they do expect to hold on to. He is only 30. And then they get Kira Lewis Jr., a former lottery pick who was looking pretty good before he tore his ACL or Achilles or whatever. They get a flyer on him, see if he can end up being what they thought he would be before the draft. And then the Raptors get Olynyk, who is a Canadian guy. He said he wants to spend the rest of his career there in Canada. So he might spend the rest of his career there. So they get a guy for the future. And they get a good veteran leader for the rest of his career, maybe. For this trade, I'm going to give Utah, they get Lewis and that first-round pick for a guy that was eating away at their guys' playing time and a guy that is a veteran that didn't fit their timeline. So I'm going to give them a B+. I think that they could have got more for Olynyk because they were basically, actually no, B-, because I think that they basically just traded Agbaji for that first. And then for Olynyk, they just basically got Porter and Lewis. I think they could have got more for Olynyk. And then for Toronto, this is a pretty good trade for Toronto. Even though they were giving up the first, I really do think Agbaji is better than whoever they could have drafted at. It's the least favorable of the three picks from Oklahoma City, the Clippers, and Houston. So it's probably going to be Houston's pick at like number 12. So I think Ochai Agbaji is better than whoever they could have picked at 12. This is that weak of a class. People don't understand that yet, but they will after the class is over. So I'm going to give Toronto an A- here. They get a good young guy and then a good locker room leader. Next up, the Thunder traded away their first-round pick this year in exchange for swap rights in 2028. What the swap rights means is if the Dallas Mavericks end up with the first overall pick and the Thunder get the 30th overall pick, the Thunder have the option to swap with them, which obviously they would in that situation. They don't have to swap with them, but if the Mavericks get a better pick, then they can. This is basically just because the Thunder literally could not draft a guy because they have 3 first-round picks already before this trade. And they already have a maxed out roster. They would have to trade away or release their guys on their roster that are already on the roster for nothing because they already have that many roster spots filled, and that pick just would mean nothing. And it's a weak draft class anyway, so they're just giving up that pick for just to gamble that the Mavericks will be really bad in 2028, which is a good deal because Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic will both be free agents by then. And they would be free agents the year before. So if Luka Doncic leaves in the summer of 2027, then that might end up being a really good pick. Could be top 10, maybe even. For the Mavericks, they do get a first-round pick for this year, which they did not already have. So for Dallas, I'm going to give them a B+ because they could get a good young guy. And then for the Thunder, this is an A+, actually, because they couldn't have done anything with this pick. They could have just traded it for a second. That's how, they can't keep this pick. And they get the rights to bet on that Luka Doncic won't still be there in 2028. So it's a really good trade for them, actually. Next up, we had Dennis Schroeder and Thaddeus Young to the Nets. And to the Raptors was Spencer Dinwiddie. For this trade, the Nets released Thaddeus Young and his $8 million, but it was only guaranteed through this season. And the Raptors released Spencer Dinwiddie and his $20 million, which was also only guaranteed through the season. So basically what the Nets did is they just got Dennis Schroeder for free because there were rumors that if they didn't trade Spencer Dinwiddie, they would have just bought him out themselves. So they saved that $20 million off their cap books for this season and get Dennis Schroeder, who is under contract for next season. He's only 30 years old. A lot of people think he's way older than he actually is. He's a good guy to have on this group. A great playmaker, really good on-ball defender, good scorer. He had 25 and 10 in his Nets debut. It was insane. He could be way better than Spencer Dinwiddie was on this team. Spencer Dinwiddie, they brought him back because they knew how good he was a couple of years ago. With Schroeder, he has already been having a decent year. Dinwiddie was struggling all year long. He now will go to the Lakers, which we'll talk about in a future video after the buyout market settles down. But it's a good trade for Brooklyn. They just get him for nothing. And for Toronto, they clear up future cap room. That's all this was about. Because since Schroeder is on the books for next season, they would have had to pay him next season. Now, with Dinwiddie, even though they're paying him $20 million for the rest of the season, they don't have to pay him anything next season unless they were to stretch and waive that deal, which I don't think that they are because they have the money to take it on. So I'm going to give the Nets an A+. Because they turned Dinwiddie into Schroeder, basically. And Dinwiddie's just gone now. And then for the Raptors, this is a B+, because they get extra cap room for next season. They might be able to land a Miles Bridges or something to go with Scotty Barnes. But they didn't get much. It's really just about cap room with this trade. Next up, we have the Knicks getting Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks in exchange for the Pistons receiving Evan Fournier, Malachi Flynn, Quentin Grimes, Ryan Arcidiacono, and 2 second-round picks and $3 million. So basically, the Pistons get Evan Fournier, who is making $19 million. He didn't want to be in New York anymore. He wasn't playing. The Detroit Pistons have not bought him out yet, I don't think. But I don't think he's going to play for them. They might end up just buying him out eventually anyway. He's only played 3 games all season, and it's all for Detroit. Then they get Malachi Flynn, who is just 25 years old. Young flyer out of San Diego State. Good shooter, good playmaker. He has a chance to be something good. He was a former first-round pick to the Toronto Raptors. Then they also get Quentin Grimes, who's a great 3-and-D guy. The Knicks are giving up on Quentin Grimes pretty fast, but they get what we'll get to in a second. They get 2 guys that will really help them win a championship, so it makes sense. And they got them for way cheaper than what their original asking price was. Quentin Grimes could end up being an all-star or all-defensive team or something crazy for Detroit in the next couple of years. Don't be surprised if he's all-defensive first team by the time Bojan Bogdanovic is a free agent in 2 seasons. But even if that does happen, if the Knicks get to the conference finals, this is a win-win trade. Then they also get Ryan Arcidiacono, who they did just release, and then they get 2 second-round picks who probably won't be anything. So basically, if you look at it like this, they basically got 2 second-round picks for Alec Burks, and then they got Malachi Flynn and Quentin Grimes for Bojan Bogdanovic. And Bojan Bogdanovic is a really, really, really good player. At one point, his asking price was 2 first-round picks. They ended up getting him gone for Quentin Grimes, so I guess is worth a first-round pick, and Malachi Flynn, who is a former first-round pick. And Bojan Bogdanovic is going to make this team great. Alec Burks had 22 points in his return to New York, the former Knick, obviously. And now New York can have a starting lineup of Brunson, who's an amazing offensive player, great playmaker, good scorer. OG Anunoby, amazing, elite defender, good scorer. Also, Bojan Bogdanovic, one of the best scorers in the NBA. Julius Randle, another great scorer. And Mitchell Robinson, who's an amazing rebounder and defender. So a really good trade for New York. It's an A+, 1,000%. For Detroit, I'm going to give them a C-. I feel like they could have got way more for Bogdanovic, but they did get a decent haul with Grimes and the 2 second-round picks. And Flynn could end up being something good for them after he has failed in his first 2 teams so far. I'm still a believer in Malachi, though. Our next trade, the the Golden State Warriors traded Corey Joseph, a 2025 second-round pick that is also top 55 protected, so it's very unlikely to actually go to the Pacers, and $6 million in exchange for a 2024 second-round pick. So, and then the Pacers released Corey Joseph, so they basically get $6 million in cap room. There's a fly. They get $6 million in cap room. $6 million in cap room for a 2024 second round pick. I think that's oh my god, that thing's huge. That's the biggest fly I've ever seen in my life. I don't even know where it came from. It's cold outside. But anyway, the Warriors get a second round pick this year. I don't think they had any picks before this trade, so that's a good trade for them. And they get rid of Corey Joseph, who barely played for them anyway. He was brought in to be a veteran point guard who was pretty good on the Detroit Pistons last year. But it was the Pistons, and now we're seeing how bad the Pistons really were even last year. So now the Warriors get a second-round pick, who this last year they picked Tracy Jackson-Davis at pick 57. So they obviously have a great mind for drafting second-round guys, because he's been a steal so far. And then for the Pacers, they get that $6 million in cap room, which will help them a lot in the future. Next up, we had a 3-team trade. The Philadelphia 76ers got Buddy Hield. The Pacers got Doug McDermott, Furkan Korkmaz, a 2024 second-round pick, and a 2029 second-round pick. And the Spurs got Marcus Morris and a 2029 second-round pick that is from the 76ers. Both 2029 picks are from the 76ers. And the 2024 one is also from the 76ers. So, the Sixers get a good shooter, an amazing shooter, actually, in Buddy Hield, who will help them stay competitive. He's a great shooter, good scorer, averaged like 20 points a game last season. I don't know what he's doing so far. He has played some games for the 76ers already. And he's played 2 games, both starts, 21 points per game for Buddy Hield. So he's an amazing pickup already. He's already fit in with this team, just like Kelly Oubre was, just a great get. Then the Pacers get Doug McDermott, who has now played his second game now. McDermott is just a pretty solid player, good veteran leader, goes back to Indiana now. Then they get Furkan Korkmaz, who they did release. Now they have to pay the rest of his $6 million. And then they get 2 second-round picks, one this year and one in 2029. The one this year won't be that much, but maybe the 2029 one will be a really stacked class and somebody falls and they get the next Draymond Green. I don't know. Then the Spurs get Marcus Morris, who they are to release, and a 2029 second-round pick from the 76ers. So basically for McDermott, they got a second-round pick. And the Pacers for Buddy Hield, all they got 2 second-round picks and Furkan Korkmaz and Doug McDermott. That's not near as much as I think that they could have got from any other team. I would have given up way more for him. He is on an expiring deal, but any team that was acquiring him, I think that they were looking to re-sign him this offseason. So it's a really interesting deal. The Sixers are by far the winner of this trade. The 76ers, I'm going to give them an A+. For the Pacers, I'm going to give them a solid C-. They basically gave up a guy that had pretty good trade value for nothing. And then the Spurs, they got a second-round pick for a good veteran that might actually help out Indiana. So I'm going to give them a B+. Good second-round pick in 2029. Could be something good. And they got cash, actually, too. So that's not a bad trade. Next up, the Dallas Mavericks got Daniel Gafford in exchange for Richaun Holmes and a first-round pick this year. For this trade, this pick that they're getting, that the Wizards are getting, will be the second least favorable out of the Thunder's, Clippers, and Rockets picks this year. So that's pretty interesting. That's a really weird trade. All they got for Gafford is a first-round pick. Because Richaun Holmes, they don't care about Richaun Holmes. He's a veteran making a lot of money this season and next season, I think. I think he has a player option. But Gafford, really athletic big man. He's going to help with Luka. He's going to be a great pick-and-roll guy for him. I don't know what they plan to do with 3 centers, though. Because Dwight Powell has not been bad this season. Dwight Powell has been pretty solid. And Derek Lively has been an amazing rookie. Maybe they take away some of Derek Lively's minutes. So far, in his first game for Dallas, Gafford had 19 points and 9 rebounds. That's a pretty good debut. And he was at the power forward position. So maybe they play... I guess Lively's a pretty decent shooter. But Powell and Gafford are not at all good shooters. So really, they get Gafford. He's a great player. He's under contract for the next 2 seasons, I think, after this one. And then all they had to give up was a first this year. And they got another first this year from the Thunder in that one trade. Really good trade for Dallas. No. That pick that they got from OKC was the pick in this trade. Okay. So they don't have a pick this year anymore, I don't think. Maybe they do. I don't know. But, so they get Gafford. He's a really good young big man with a lot of pick-and-roll potential. Great rebounder. I'm going to give him an A-. For the Wizards, they get Holmes and a first-round pick this year in a weak class. And it's second least favorable, so it's probably the Clippers pick. That's not going to be a good pick at all. That's going to be right at the end of the first round. D+. They could have held on to Gafford until the offseason and got way more. He's a really good young guy who's shown a lot of potential to be the next, Drummond. And all they got for him was a first-round pick. It's not a good trade. Then the Mavericks got P.J. Washington and 2 second-round picks in exchange for Grant Williams, Seth Curry, and a 2027 first-round pick. For this trade, the Mavericks gave up Grant Williams, who's a better rebounder and maybe a better defender, but a terrible scorer this season, for P.J. Washington, who's a worse rebounder and defender, arguably, but a way better scorer for sure. And then they get a second-round pick this year and one in 2028. P.J. Washington is making more money as well, though. I do want to point that out. And he is also... P.J. Washington probably has more potential. Grant Williams is probably near his peak, whereas Washington still has a lot of room to grow. And then for this trade, they get he's a great scorer. He's going to be another guy that'll help Luka Doncic out on the pick and roll, pick and pop even, from the three-point line because he's a good shooter too. So he's probably a better piece than Grant Williams, but they also had to give up a future first. And they also had to give up a future first to get Grant Williams in the first place. So that's basically 2 first-round picks and Seth Curry and Grant Williams is what they gave out to get P.J. Washington. So with